Retro.
And welcome everybody to another episode of the Animanicast.
Bumpy wasn't a cartoon, it was a movie. Bumpy's mother is...
Is it me? That mama dear was just an actress, Vina Wallin. We were pals. She used to date George Jetson. Look, have I ever lied to you before?
You said Keno was legal in Burbank. You said Miguel Gorilla was a woman. You said...
Can it?
And welcome everybody once again to the Animanicast. This, of course, is the podcast that is dedicated to the animated television series Animaniacs, as well as other shows within the Rueggerverse, such as Tiny Toon Adventures, Pinky and the Brain, and Freakazoid. And today, it is part 2 of our interview with Jon McClenahan. Yeah, we're going to be talking about all the different things about Animaniacs and beyond with StarToons. That's right. Well, let's get to introductions. I am Joey, and of course, joining me once again, there's my brother Nathan.
And my catchphrase.
What a great one. And across the country in Georgia, there's Kelly.
Hello.
And joining us from the Ozarks area is our special guest, Jon McClenahan.
Here I am. I forgot my banjo.
And, of course, it's our honorary fourth co-host. It's the creator of Animaniacs himself. It's Mr. Tom Ruegger.
It's the Johnny McClenahan Show.
Oh. See,
yeah,
I'm glad that my father actually showed me Beanie and Cecil, so I could get that reference right there. So
a whole half hour.
Yeah, a whole half hour. Yes, we're back to talk about StarToons and Jon's work with all that crazy group of people, and of course, StarToons' contribution to Animaniacs, which, of course, some of the StarToons episodes of Animaniacs really, I don't know how you were lucky enough to get such a great roster of scripts sent to you. You really, whereas other animation groups like, oh, okay, that segment was okay, that one was okay. It seems like StarToons, not only was the animation always fantastic, but you guys really got some fantastic scripts to work with as well.
Yeah. I guess I have to thank Tom for that. I mean, we always tried to make the most of any script that we got, but I'll tell you what. I mean, they were just fun to work on, and I mean, when you get to work on shows that are fun, I mean, you almost feel guilty getting paid. I mean, I didn't feel guilty getting paid, but almost.
They were always a lot of work, but I did definitely pick out the ones that I thought StarToons could hit over the fence.
Yes.
And I mean, after they just clobbered Baby Plucky in that first Tiny Toons, then, we started definitely directing specific scripts towards StarToons. And certainly with Animaniacs, I mean, they were there the whole run. So we were always putting special ones aside for Jon and crew.
Well, we were happy that you did.
Yes. So, Tom, we left off on our discussion really with Tiny Toon Adventures. So the decision was made at that point, really kind of like, here's the animation companies that we're going to be working with, and StarToons was just one of the first picks right away. Is that how it really went down?
Yes. I mean, we knew we were doing Animaniacs, and we knew we had ACOM, a TMS, Cuckoo's Nest, and StarToons. And I think we divvied them up pretty much fairly equally among that group. I mean, we didn't want to overwhelm StarToons with stuff, but we certainly kept them busy. Also, Freelance Graphics in New Zealand did just a few episodes. But anyway, yeah, so we definitely sent what we felt were especially funny and I mean, we clearly we sent the first Slappy to John and crew, and they did that so well. We really started saying, "Hey, the Slappies are going to Chicago."
Yeah, I think the first Slappy we did was Slappy Goes Walnuts.
Yes, which was the first Slappy.
Was it? Okay, there you go. And Spike Brandt. I mean, by the time Animaniacs hit, and I think we were last week. I think we talked a little bit about the Christmas special, and I think while we were working on the Christmas special, you guys in LA were getting Animaniacs ready to go, and so we were kind of we were almost a little distracted. I mean, we were like, we couldn't wait to see what this Animaniacs thing was all about. But by that time, I knew we were going to have a pretty big workload, and it wasn't going to be something that just me and Spike Brandt were going to be able to handle. So we started going out and just recruiting anybody that looked like they could draw well, B, had a good sense of humor, C, they were hungry to animate. I mean, that was one of my biggest conditions. I wasn't really looking for people who had college pedigrees or anything. I was really looking for, did they like to draw and did they want to animate? And I just, I could say I got very lucky. I was blessed, but some of these people just came out of the woodwork. And I think they heard that, there was the studio StarToons that was starting to do national footage, not just, soap commercials and stuff, which is what we would most of what was done in Chicago. Spike Brandt was just the best. Now, did I tell you the story of how Spike got his name?
I don't think so.
So his name is Christopher Brandt. His name is Chris. And my wife's name is Chris. So when I would be yelling, "Hey, Chris," they would both answer because she was there too. And, and Spike with his kind of droll sense of humor. And of course, he's a big Tom and Jerry fan also. And so there's that bulldog in Tom and Jerry named Spike. He said, "Look, John, from now on, just call me Spike." And so that's how we handled it. It was that eliminated the confusion. And Spike was a gem. I mean, he was just a gem. He worked hard. His work was excellent. And he's a monster. I mean, he's still in the business and he's still cranking out great stuff. He recently directed this latest Space Jam movie, and he was able to squeeze me in for a few scenes on that one. I'm always thankful for that. Tony Cervoni was selling shoes in a Chicago strip mall, and he liked to draw, but he didn't want to come on full time because at the time I wasn't offering any medical benefits, and I said, "But look, you're going to get paid so much more than you will selling shoes that you'll be able to pay for your own medical benefits." And so that convinced him. And then later on, we did give him medical benefits. So, and he directed the first Space Jam movie. So,
and yeah, they're both very big at Warner Brothers. I mean,
big.
They've done a lot of great stuff. A lot of great stuff.
And then there was another fellow that worked at another studio named Jeff Sergey. And he had been the lead animator at Calabash Studios, and he kept hearing about how Spike Brandt was getting to work on all this really cool stuff. And finally, he kind of came and talked to me, and because I hadn't wanted to go after him because he was the lead animator for another guy. I didn't want there to be bad feelings about taking away their lead animator, but I did. And then Neil Sternicke was a comic book artist who was actually working on the old Walt Kelly strip Pogo, and he had somehow gotten the gig where he was continuing to draw the Pogo strip, and he was interested in animation, didn't know anything about it, and so I said, well, you know, we'll put you in as an in-betweener, because that's one of the best ways to kind of learn on the job. You know, especially if you can draw, you're gonna do well, and you kind of get the idea of the mechanics. I always thought that in-betweening was sort of like animation school, except you get paid for it.
Yeah, Neil did a lot of work on the Animaniacs comic book too.
Yes,
I was like, where have I just seen that name? We just talked about an Animaniacs comic book a few weeks ago, and his name came up as I think the penciler, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
Yeah, he's well known and well established. He's a hustler too, so he just stays busy. And when he finally got to the point where I think I told you last week, I promoted myself to animator. He kind of did that too with us. He just said, he said, John, I think I've got the in-betweening thing down. I want to animate. And I said, well, you know, why don't you give it another month or so? He says, I'm not sticking around a month unless you let me animate. So we gave him the first Randy Beeman cartoon.
Oh, beautiful. Beautiful.
And he did it, and it was so charming, and it had a distinctive style to it. So whenever we did any of our other Randy Beeman cartoons, we always used his as kind of our standard.
Can you imagine Randy Beeman, that charming kid, coming out, and he walks out of the house a different way each time?
I know.
Done by almost any other studio. I mean, I just can't imagine him tootling out that door and rubbing his nose and picking at himself. And because you know what, it really wasn't in the script. It was he comes out and he says something, but you guys brought that kid to life.
Totally.
It was so quirky. I mean, it was just so the humor was exactly the kind of thing that I love. Just really quirky kind of humor, and it's like, wait, is that the joke? You know?
Yeah. Oh, that was it. Okay.
Well,
that was it. Okay.
As a kid, it was great to see. I mean, I think the kids got to see themselves basically on TV a lot there too, because it really was like, oh yeah, I heard that same story on the schoolyard today.
Urban myths.
Yeah. It was. I mean, to me, it just showed how in tune with kids the writers were, because it really sounded exactly like you said, Joey. It sounded exactly like something that a kid would come up with. I was going to say Ron Fleisher was my tech guy. He was a Chicago guy. He was one of the guys in the elevator when we went to LA. He had gone to animation school, and he learned all the nuts and bolts. So he was my technical guy. He knew how to splice film together. He knew how to work a Chem or a Steenbeck editing bench, 35 millimeter film with 8 plates rolling at one time. He knew how to sync up a soundtrack. He could do track rating, so he could do everything. He called himself an animator, but when he showed me some of his drawings, I said, "You're going to be my tech guy."
By the way, I should mention that StarToons, unlike the other studios, consistently provided us with a pencil test of each episode prior to us receiving the color footage. So I tortured them because I would go over the pencil test. I'd send them notes. Oh, you have to make sure this character does that better. And so, they must have loved those notes. ACOM did it for a while, and they said, we can't get the shows done this way, and they would just come. So we said, okay, ACOM, stop. And the ACOM had sort of a lugubrious quality, if you'll pardon the expression, to their animation. It was a little I don't know. It's like they were a little bloated or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, the StarToons pencil tests, they're fascinating to watch those.
Yeah, a lot of them I've seen have been getting posted online in various places and everything. So it's always fun to look at those and see them, because you really get a real feel of the artist behind the camera when you're watching those.
Yep.
Hey John, I've got a question. Because you're talking about your crew and everything. But I don't think we discussed how, when you started StarToons, how you got all the equipment and everything that you needed to start an animation studio.
Yeah, well, all I really needed to do animation was a light box and some paper and pencil. So that was pretty easy. And I actually, believe it or not, I got started in the business. I think we talked about it last week in Australia. And when Hanna-Barbera's studio in Australia closed down, they were getting ready to junk all the light boxes. And I said, let me get my light box and let me take that back to America with me. So I took that. So I had my own light box. And then when it came time to finish the film or to get anything done, I would just freelance it out. I would subcontract somebody to, track read the voice track, or to, do pencil tests for me or anything like that.
Oh, okay.
But eventually, yeah. I mean, I'll never forget when we were like, okay, we're going to do this whole season of Animaniacs. We got to get ourselves our own editing bench. And I don't know, we bought one for about, $15,000. That was big deal. And now I think it would make a great boat anchor because I was going to try and sell it for $100 to a film museum, because it's nobody uses editing.
Where is it? Where is it?
I think it ended up getting the building that we had when we went out of business later became a restaurant, and I think it was we just left it in there and let them take care of it. So I don't know if they gutted it and put a microwave oven in it, but that was one of those sad things. It was the biggest, most expensive piece of equipment we had, and it's
how many light boards did you have there? Animation light boards?
I would guess we had probably 30 or more.
Wow. And were they bought or rented or?
Well, there's a place in LA where you can get the discs called Cartoon Colors, I think.
Yep.
And so whenever we needed those sort of things, we'd have to have them shipped from LA. But to get the actual light boxes, we generally, after, now that I had mine from Australia, I found a guy who could do some carpentry, and I just said, can you make more of these? And I just showed it to him, and showed him the disc that had to be, he had to drill a hole or cut a hole in the table to put the disc in, and he made it just right. And so he ended up doing a whole bunch for us. In fact, our directors, we made these enclosed things. We called them white towers because the guy laminated them with white whatever. But they were they were U-shaped. They were U-shaped, and they had built-in shelves, and they had towers. And the light box was built into it, and so you basically could just slide your chair in there, and you'd have your tape recorder on your left, and you'd have your pencil sharpener on the right, and you had shelves for all your clean paper and all your shelves for all your ruined paper, and and there was a little locker in there where you could put your gold.
How many did you make of those? 4 of those?
Yeah, so I had one, and then Spike had one, and Tony had one, and Kirk Tingblad had one.
Right.
Kirk was another one.
Yeah. Go tell me about Kirk.
He came to us from Minneapolis. We'd been farming out some stuff to an old guy in New Mexico, and I can't remember the guy's name. I feel bad about that. But he while we were still looking for animators, we were starting to substitute or sub out some of the animation. We'd send these packages, and it was some old guy who had worked on I don't know, the Flintstones or something, but he was retired, and he was just kind of doing it to stay, shake the cobwebs off. And then but he said, "Hey, I've got a friend who lives up in Minneapolis." So it was kind of weird. He had a friend in Minneapolis. He was in New Mexico, but he says, this guy is really good, and blah blah blah. Anyway, he put me in contact with him, and his name was Kirk Tingblad, and so I was able to get Kirk Tingblad to move down to Chicago, and he became my fourth director. And he was a wild character. He was he was a
wild name.
Yeah, red-headed Viking from the north. And
you can see Kirk. I don't know how much this was actually practiced with a lot of you guys, but I remember seeing like this guy with this weird shaggy hair and a big mustache and glasses, and he would pop up at a lot of StarToons. Like he'd be like in the Plain Pals cartoon, and he'd be in Meatballs Are Consequences, and he kind of stands up in Meatballs Are Consequences, going, "Better go! I got to sell the wife some iron ore," or something like that. And that's Kirk Tingblad's caricature. He put himself in there.
Yeah, he did that whenever he could. And I mean, that was one thing that we all did. It was something that we had done in Australia. Was we would just often, if there was a crowd scene and they had a bunch of incidental characters, we'd just substitute the faces of our staff into those things, and that was our own little in joke. And so I started doing that a little bit. I don't know if I did it on the first Tiny Toons. I might have been a little nervous to try that, but I think after we got in good with Warner Brothers, we started doing it. And of course, Kirk just loved that idea, so he I think he used it or abused that privilege too much. Did you know that Genndy Tartakovsky worked for me for a while?
I had no idea. Of course, like Kelly, you and I probably know Genndy Tartakovsky a lot from the Clone
Star Wars.
Star Wars, yeah, the Star Wars series that he, of course, worked on. Yeah. But he's done a lot of projects over the years, and I had no idea he had worked for StarToons at any.
Well, he had actually been my teacher's assistant, my TA, when I was teaching at Columbia College in Chicago, and I used I taught animation at Columbia once a week, and that was one of my other ways of scouting for talent. And it actually became a bit of a point of contention with Columbia, because when I would see somebody who could draw, I would tell them, "Listen,
come see me.
Quit school and come work for me." And the head of the department found out about it, and he gave me a good dressing down about it, but I didn't stop. But Genndy was my TA, so and he was doing his own film project, and he was a good hard worker. He had a good sense for entertainment. It's funny because his drawing wasn't real good at first, but later he had kind of a crush on John Kricfalusi, and he really wanted to be doing Ren and Stimpy cartoons. And so when he found out that I wasn't going to be doing any Ren and Stimpy cartoons, he took off for LA. and that was the last I saw him.
Well, a lot of these guys went to LA ultimately.
Yeah, they became what they called the Chicago Mob. Had you heard that, Tom?
Sure, yeah. They would rub you out.
Yeah,
with an eraser.
We knew how to animate, and we knew how to, make you sleep with the fishes. But,
I think David Pryor and John Griffin went west as well, I believe. Did they not?
I don't think they did. Now they came later, John and Dave, and they're both very talented guys. But at the time that we closed down, they headed to the north side of town and went to work for Williams Games or I forget what that. It used to be part of the same outfit that owned Midway Games, and Midway used to make Mortal Kombat. So anyway, these guys went up there, and John and Dave and a lot of the other good talented guys kind of took over. They were making games for like pinball machines and stuff, but they were actually doing. I said, how do you use cartoon work in pinball games? And like one-armed bandit games and stuff. And apparently they changed the technology to the point where they were actually playing cartoons in these gambling games. And so that's what they did. They ended up working for the mafia. Well, all their stuff went to Las Vegas, right? James Tucker.
Yes.
He was another one. He became the producer on Batman, didn't he?
Yep.
And Justice League and things like that. He was a great artist that he just kind of fell in our lap, and I could tell that the guy had great talent and, again, no experience, but he had that hunger, but he really wanted to be doing like Superman and Batman and stuff like that. I said, well, we're not doing those shows, but here, see if you can handle Slappy Squirrel. But yeah, Dave Pryor, Mary Hanley was another one. She was just a terrific draftsman. She had a kind of a droll sense of humor. She was a good animator, a good layout artist, but I almost hated promoting her to animator because she was such a great assistant animator. She did the scene in 13 something where it was like a split screen telephone dialogue between Buster and Babs when she had left Tiny Toons and she'd gone to work for this soap opera show. They're having this kind of uncomfortable conversation with each other, and the shot lasted 108 feet, which is it's about 2 weeks worth of animation.
Wow.
Just for that one scene. And I animated that and I gave it to her because I knew she was going to do a great job.
That's over a minute, right? Over a minute.
Yeah. 90 feet is a minute. So
over a minute.
Yeah.
And that's with and it wasn't being done in the camera, the split screen. It was literally both characters were appearing on the same cell. The whole.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh my God.
We animated them on the same, in the same scene, and
in the same scene. Yeah. Wow. That's a lot of line work.
That was a lot of line work, and even one side of the screen started splitting off to Plucky and Shirley MacLaine talking about something. I remember they were in that scene, and so it was like we had 4 or 5 characters going on at once.
Well, I always found that when there was an artist who was considered cleanup, and that sounds lowly, but the artist that could clean up the animator's work beautifully and the final line quality was like consistent and pretty.
Yes.
That person was gold. and
Yes.
you really didn't want them to leave the assistant area.
Right.
Because no one was going to be better than they were
Right.
at that. Yeah.
Right. Yep. And that's exactly right. But at the same time, you don't want to punish them for doing a good job. So,
Right.
So you had to kind of balance that off. Another gal that was a great cleanup and assistant was Tammy Daniel Bisk. Now she ended up going into Disney. That was kind of her dream. So she kind of used us as a jumping off point to get into Disney. TJ House, there was another guy who I'm not sure the first animation he did for us was on a show we did for Cartoon Network, but he did a great job. Perry Zombolis, he ended up being a producer on Phineas and Ferb. So another Columbia College kid, Mike Owens, who ended up having his own series, Danger and Eggs, which
I don't know that one. Yeah.
I never saw it either, but I heard it was good. There was another fella named Vince Prose, and Vince has become like a world quality inspiration artist. I mean, he like designs characters for movies and stuff now. I mean, he's just a real. I mean, he's way up there in the high echelons of visualization. I guess pre-viz sort of stuff. He designs characters. Great painter. Great, it's like, and he could animate too. But he his real forte. He just kind of did that to stay out of jail.
You had a huge amount of like incredibly talented people right there all together. Like that is like, and just to hear how they went off to different, and some of these are still huge mover and shakers in the industry today.
Yes, they are. Like I say, I was just very blessed to have them hanging around our studio for a while.
Let's talk about some of the cartoons you made.
Yeah.
Well, so the first one we did was the Big Candy Store, the Great Candy Store or something. What was it? The Big Candy Store.
The Big Candy Store.
Yes.
Yeah. So that was the
Flaxseed.
Yakko, Wacko, and Dot, and Flaxseed, and he was kind of a takeoff on John Cleese, right?
Yes, that was the voice.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
Did he actually do the voice?
Now Jeff Bennett. Jeff Bennett really had a darn good
spot
Cleese.
On.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, Jeff did a great job doing John Cleese. And the one big problem we had a very talented background painter that we had just hired, and he did what I thought were great backgrounds, and we showed them to Warner Brothers, and it was like there was a 3-alarm fire all of a sudden. It was like, these are terrible, these are awful. Well, here's the problem. He just did them with like way too bright of colors. Which was going, and it was a candy store anyway, so it wasn't like it wasn't going to be a colorful backdrop, but he ended up making his colors too bright, and we had to have a guy come to Chicago from LA to show him how to not paint with such bright colors. And I think he took all his, what was the guy's name?
Brian Seaburn.
That's right, Brian. He was a great guy.
Yeah, he is.
Another tall guy, big redhead.
That's right. And John, in case anyone doesn't know this, how tall are you, Mr. McClenahan?
I'm 6'7".
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So
wow.
and Brian Seaburn was up below 6'7", but he was up there. Yeah.
Not much. When I see. If I can't see across the top of their head, I start getting scared. But he came by, and I think he basically took all of this fella's backgrounds and just took a white airbrush and just started lightly spraying white paint over everything.
Pull it back.
and that pulled it back, and that saved the show, and it saved us a lot of headaches after that because our guy now knew how to paint backgrounds properly.
And I think that the saturation of colors is whenever people can figure that out by pulling it back, less saturated, it really makes huge difference, and especially in the backgrounds, especially when the characters up in front of the background are saturated fully. Then they can read against that background. Yeah.
Right. That's the whole thing. And I've got a terrible sense of color, so that's why I've always been good just drawing with black pencil on white paper, because I can understand those two colors. But but yeah, it's like a background has to be a background, and so there's just a fine art to that, and choosing colors that are going to bring the character forward. Not only colors on the characters, but also colors on the background that are actually going to help the character. Like I look at you, Tom, sitting there, and you've got your background nicely blurred. And
yes, I spray painted it with just a little white.
White on everything. Was that it? Yeah. I obviously put too much white on mine.
No, that's good. Bunny Munns was our color coordinator on almost all the shows. And Bunny Munns, I like the color blue, and she would come because Wacko's got a blue shirt, and Buster Bunny they had the same outfit, Wacko and Buster, and Bunny she would come up with these colors on the characters that were just like, I'm gonna have to kill you. Because we'd have the backgrounds, and sometimes they would, when the character vanishes into the background, right, you're in trouble.
Yeah, no contrast right there.
So let's talk about some of Jon's big episodes. So there was the big candy store, and you got past the background issue.
Yeah, I think I was kind of heading up that one, and then at the same time, I think Spike was handling the Slappy cartoon, and I did some of the scenes on that. I mean, it was like, we had 4 units going, with a guy supervising each unit, but we would borrow from the other units, and we would ask, hey, could you do these scenes here? I'd ask Spike to do some of the scenes in my cartoons, and he'd ask me to do some of the scenes in his cartoons. So it was pretty loosey-goosey. I mean, the whole thing was just try and get the best stuff done by the best people.
I love in that episode where the football team comes running into the candy store. That's hilarious.
I'm Kelly, I'm so glad you brought that up, because that I did that one that had a ton of pencil mileage on it, and and I remember thinking how I would like to date one of the cheerleaders that I was animating.
She was cute. Yeah, she was cute.
They were, well, I think there were 4 of them, but we just duplicated one.
Yeah.
But yeah, and
then the nuns came in. I believe there were some nuns.
Yes,
they were fabulous.
They were. They weren't as sexy though.
No, but they had good Irish accents.
Yes, they did. Yes, they did.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Kelly, for remembering that from that cartoon.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Well, thank you. Let's see. One of the. I mean, Dot the macadamia nut was one, but that was one from the 2nd season, right? Wasn't it?
Or 3rd even. I mean, it was really
later
in the final 20 episodes, I think. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think it's on the. If you're going off the DVDs, I think it's on the last disc of the last season.
Is it? Okay.
Yes. But it's
So,
it's one of the most memorable segments. I was showing it to my students actually a week ago, and they were all getting a real kick of watching that, especially with these close-ups of the hip hippo's butts and Ralph in this crop top kind of thing, slowly gyrating and
with his belly button
his
revealed.
belly. Oh my gosh.
Did your students get to see the original music video for that?
I don't think so. Oh, I don't know. I don't think so. They know
even
the
know the
song.
song?
They know the
Okay.
song. The Macarena is still such a part of every. I mean, you can't go to a wedding these days, I think, still, and not have that song play at some point.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
I think you're right. But yeah, the Macarena. So, well, I guess as long as we're on it, we should talk about it, right? So first of all, my other son Vince was on an all-star baseball team that I was helping to coach, and their team somehow decided, the kids, and he was like 12 years old at the time, when they would win a game, they would all get out on the field and play the Macarena and dance the Macarena. And so I, just to be a cool parent, I had to learn how to do the dance. but the best thing was one of Tom's assistants,
Kimberly McKelvey.
That's her name, Kimberly McKelvey. I don't know if she volunteered or was drafted to provide video reference for us for all the different moves of the Macarena. And so we had video reference, which was great because, I didn't want to have to get up and do the Macarena while I was animating and look in a mirror. First of all, you don't want to see me doing the Macarena anyway. So, but Kimberly did a great job. And she provided all the poses we needed that we could incorporate them into Dot and Hello Nurse and everybody else who is doing it, and Pip Pump Handle.
It really is a great. I mean, it's. I was thinking when I was watching
I think the mime is in there.
Yeah, the mime. It shows just about every Animaniacs character. It's one of the cartoons, I think, that has the best showcase of all the cast. It really goes through, and it's great in its placement, I think, in the seasons, because you really are getting the sense of as you're wrapping up the series, you're really getting the sense of like, wow, we're getting close to the end, but here we are. It's almost like almost a curtain call in some ways of all these great characters really showing off.
Newt is even in it.
Newt is even doing
Yes,
awooga awooga Minerva. But yeah, it's so crazy. But that StarToons, you have your that signature style of drawing these different characters, and even the ones that maybe you didn't necessarily have that much experience with, like the Goodfeathers and everything, are in that as well.
Right.
There's a beautiful version of it, by the way, online on Facebook, and not every version of it is really pretty, because sometimes I think the first time it aired, there were some shots that were like darker than others, and it had to do with
I remember that.
There were a couple of special in-camera trick shots, weren't there? I mean, or were there?
There was. Now here's a bit of interesting history. Warner Brothers. This is at a time when things were starting to go digital, but Warner Brothers did not want any of this stuff done digitally, which was probably smart at the time, because everything digital at that time would have been useless today. So they wanted everything on film because that was the best way to keep these things at the highest possible resolution when it would be decided, what the format would be when they would go digital. So they would not allow us to do anything digitally. We did have a digital system. We were using Toon Boom animation for other projects, but we couldn't use them for Warner Brothers. But we did the scenes that look, where it's many characters kind of scrolling up in different columns.
Machine.
It's like a slot machine.
Yeah.
And that's right. Those ones we did digitally, and we had to get special permission. We printed those out onto film from digital, but we had to get special permission to do it from Warner Brothers. So those were the first digitally produced shots in that series. I don't know if they ever did any more. So there you go.
Oh.
Yeah, and then we printed them onto 35 millimeter film so they could be cut in with the rest of it. But yeah, it would have been too difficult to do it with cells, I think. Or let's put it this way. And I think that's part of the problem that we had with some of that stuff was being dark. Well, it was all on a white background, and white really enhanced any of the. If we had one scene that had 3 cell levels and another one had 6 cell levels, then that white would end up looking a little bit darker. Yeah, it would be a little darker. So I'm sure somehow they were able to sort all that out in the end. But yeah, I think I remember the first time I saw it, it was like, oh, that looks kind of dirty.
I don't know if all of our listeners know that in the old days, the number of levels of characters you had to, and then you were painting each character. But then if another level came on with another character, suddenly the character that's behind that character now, the paint needs to be slightly different so that it is brighter and cuts through the other level of cell. So there were these incremental differences between paints that you would have to do on the backs of these cells. It's just mathematically a mind boggler.
And would the painting, I don't think we talked about it, would the painting be done there at StarToons as well, or where was that sent out?
Yeah, that was sent out. We sent it out to there were Korean studios coming out of the woodworks trying to get our work, and so we ended up settling on somebody that we'd never heard of, and I don't think anybody else has either. But they ended up, I mean, it wasn't ACOM and it wasn't Cuckoo's Nest or anything, but it was somebody.
Yeah.
Cuckoo's Nest did some of your Tiny Toon stuff, I think.
Maybe.
I think so. But
it's possible.
Hey, who did? Do you remember Critical Condition? It was a Slappy cartoon.
Yes, yeah. Because by that time, I had kind of laid claim on all the Slappy cartoons. So that
Imagine if we had called her Clappy. That would have been
Clappy the squirrel.
That would have been a whole different cartoon.
Yeah, that's from my Navy days.
But so yeah, Critical Condition. I gotta say, maybe the most violent of all of the animated cartoons, and I do love it. I love it so. I
do too, and I loved seeing Siskel and Ebert suffer.
And they were Chicago guys, right?
And they were Chicago guys. It was funny that actually while we were working on it, my brother Dave, who was help. So I've got a brother Dave, and I've also got a son Dave. So my brother Dave was.
They ran out of names at the McClenahans. It was just like, we're done.
We really. It was like John and Dave. What else we got? Yeah, there's Dave.
Dave, John, Chris. That's it.
That was it. But he ended up visiting somebody from his church in the hospital, and he remembers going to visit this guy, and he saw Gene Siskel, and Gene was visiting somebody also who was sick. So I don't think Gene Siskel lived much longer after this cartoon. Anyway,
I want to say he did. I think, but I might be wrong. But yeah, I still critical condition. The highlight for me is the most disgusting part of any Animaniacs cartoon. She's shaking the butter, the butter out of his gut.
The lard out of
the lard out of your gut.
That's so fantastic.
Oh my
I'm
God.
so proud of that.
Are you proud of that, Tom?
I'm so proud of that. And
you should sit in the corner for that.
They requested, Siskel and Ebert requested a copy of the cartoon.
Wow.
Really?
Not to criticize it, just to have. They wanted to have.
Just to have it.
To have, yeah.
Funny. That's funny. That's funny. I mean, I love the idea that there'd be these serious film critics somehow falling under the power of Slappy Squirrel. You know, just that she would be able to torment them. So yeah, that one. Actually,
yeah. Sorry.
Go ahead.
You go.
Well, one of the first scenes that James Tucker did was the Tyrannosaurus chasing Siskel and Ebert. So I did the one where it stepped on them and got them into the movie because they got stuck on his foot. But she had put Slappy had put Siskel and Ebert right up next to the screen, and the Tyrannosaurus from Jurassic Park stomps on them, and they get stuck in his foot, and now they're stuck in the film, which can only happen in cartoons.
Yeah.
A beautiful scene in that. I mean, going from the lard scene to something more beautiful is when Slappy is in her house, in her treehouse, and the critics are saying these horrible things about Slappy's career and her cartoons. And Slappy's standing there, and the animation is brilliant. Each line is delivered as if it were a punch to her face, but there's no one there punching her. But her animation is just beautiful. It's reacting as if she's just being belted back and forth. Fabulous.
Yeah, that was one of those scenes that was kind of tough to do because it's like, okay, she's getting hit, but she's not really getting hit. So,
not easy.
But it looked like she was getting hurt badly, didn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about Bambi's mom? What other cartoons should we be talking about today?
Yeah, there are so many. I could just list. Let me just go off the quick list for our listeners, and we won't be able to go through all of these, obviously, but these are all the ones that StarToons as a whole did. So they first did I'm going off the Wikipedia here, which starts off with, of course, with this the great Slappy Squirrel intro. There was two versions, and you guys did the first version, which is fantastic. Of course, we mentioned all the Randy Beeman segments for them. We mentioned Slappy Goes Walnuts. There's a bunch of these little transition shots with like a film projector, going kind of like the Rocky and Bullwinkle ones, going from one cartoon to the next.
Right. Did that have Dr. Scratch and Sniff?
Yes.
Right.
There's the song "What Are We," which is I love how the transitions of the characters in that. We
are dogs, little dogs
with ears.
Right.
Okay. We mentioned the big candy store, and of course we're talking about Bambi's mom, which was just fantastic. Wally Llama.
I love Wally Llama.
Wally
Llama.
Llama. There's a thing. It says fortunes. I don't know what that's their fortune. Like what's their fortune? Another transitional.
I didn't get a fortune. I got the next cartoon.
Yes, another transitional.
Right. Yeah.
Meatballs Are Consequences.
I love that one.
Yes, fantastic one there. Wacko's America. I mean, this is like that classic, just Wacko jumping around the United States. Garden the Garden with Slappy and the snake.
Well, yeah, the Wacko's America, though. I mean, that thing has been watched because kids use that to memorize the state capital.
Yes, to this day, that'll stick around until we get Puerto Rico or somebody else in that part of another state, or Washington D.C. or something, because Washington D.C. is mentioned, I think, isn't it? So I mean, hey, we can make Washington D.C. its own state, and it'll still count. But
it's still relevant.
It's still relevant, and that'll be around for that has longevity.
Now Yakko's World has to be updated, though, doesn't it?
Yeah,
exactly.
It does.
So this one's got longer
legs.
Tajikistan is not in there, John.
I know. I know.
By the way, Super 7 is releasing their Wacko figure, and guess what comes with it? The map of the United States comes with a Wacko.
Wow.
Yeah, it's coming with the action figure right there of Wacko.
Cool.
Garden, of course, Slappy and the Snake. We have Plain Pals. We have Be Careful What You Eat, another fantastic song. Yakko's World of Baldness. Chairman of the Board with Pip.
Chairman of the Board, fabulous.
Chairman of the Board.
Pump handle.
Yeah, it's of course one of my favorite transitional things, which is the cartoons in Wacko's body, which of course ends with the great press conference at the end. Love that. Critical Condition, we had mentioned.
Oh, my fanny hurts. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody. Critical Condition.
We took it out. Yeah.
A great Slappy intro, Buttermilk, It Makes a Body Bitter. Broadcast Nuisance.
Now, that's the one, John, of all the cartoons, because John said, he thought one cartoon was our least favorite, but Broadcast Nuisance was one that ultimately was butchered at our end because someone, like a lawyer or something, saw it and thought that who was it? It was Sam Donaldson. We were really ripping on Sam Donaldson, and anyway, we had to edit the daylights out of it.
Really?
Wasn't his name like something Fondlesome or something like that as well, or something? It was really like everything from top to.
That was his name in the cartoon.
I want to say,
right?
They had to change it to Ted Anchorman or something like that. Dan Anchorman.
Fondlesome. That's Why? What were we thinking? I don't know.
Probably just how can we make it funny?
Yeah.
Oh, let's get the lawyers involved.
Yes, let's get the lawyers involved. So keep going, Joey. You're doing great.
Okay. All right. So we got Windsor Hassle. I went to
the Queen Mom.
Yep.
That's right. Yeah.
And Justice for Slappy.
Was that Wah Wah Wah? No, that was a different one. Justice for Slappy.
Justice for Slappy with the wolves as the jurors, and
right.
Animaniacs, of course, delicious cereal.
I love that commercial. That's gee, and Slappy, we're on the box. Are we getting paid for this? You're not.
You're not.
Frontier Slappy.
Fabulous. Oh, gosh.
Yep.
Jon McClenahan, animated it, but Jon McCann wrote that, and it had the Dover Boys singing in it. It was just wonderful.
And the Dover Boys were actual like Chuck Jones characters at one time or something,
right? Yeah, they were.
I had never heard of them before, so it was like but yeah. I think Tom put me straight. He's like, these are the Dover Boys, by Chuck Jones. And I was like, what? Who? So, of course,
they were in one cartoon. So this is, I think, their second appearance. I believe.
Oh, good.
As long as Chuck Jones is brought up, I might as well bring up a question from one of our patrons. He asks, Paul asks, was Chuck Jones a big influence in laying out and timing and pacing in your animation, John?
Absolutely. Look, when I started in animation, I didn't know Chuck Jones from Winnie the Pooh, but I did. I had never.
Reminds me of a very young Winnie the Pooh.
I had never studied animation history or anything, but I just knew. I knew there were cartoons that I watched that I really liked, and I never paid attention to credits or anything. So I had no idea what anybody was doing as far as, the cartoons I liked. But I knew that I really liked the Roadrunner cartoons, and I liked a lot of the Bugs Bunny ones, but not all of them. And what I found out later on was that the ones I liked were the Chuck Jones ones. And I was talking to Tom about this when the whole Silver Age of cartoons was starting. There was a big division among animators as to who they liked more, Bob Clampett or Chuck Jones. And I at that time wouldn't have known one from the other. I wouldn't have known whose animation was whose. Mm-hmm. But as I began to, I thought, well, I need to be better informed, so I better start studying some of this stuff. And I came to realize that, the one I was really trying to emulate was Chuck Jones. But and it's not to say anything bad about Bob Clampett. I thought Chuck's stuff was kind of quirky and cute, and I think late in his career, Chuck probably got too cute for his own good. But I
think his cartoon, when in the 50s, when he was making the Roadrunner cartoons, the best of the Bugs Daffy conflicts. I mean, the personalities were so vivid and strong, and they really completely were alive with who they were. The personalities were so clear, and they were very thoughtful. They were thoughtfully planned out. I mean, that Bugs Bunny cartoon where he's dissing the opera singer. I mean, it's a brilliant cartoon from start to finish.
Long-haired hair.
It's not just crazy nonsense, which some of the early Clampett stuff is just crazy nonsense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like chaos, which it can be funny. I think it's like if you ask me who is the best at animating Daffy Duck, I'd probably say Clampett. Because he was chaotic, but exactly what you said, Tom. Is just I really appreciated the kind of clear character and personality that kind of came out with Jones's stuff. So I'm today I'm not going to say one's better than the other, but I will say that Chuck Jones definitely had probably the most influence on me, on my style, or it was like when I thought, what's going to make this thing good? I didn't think Chuck Jones, but I guess I was in the back of my mind saying, whatever Chuck Jones did, worked well there.
And your art, your animation, your cartoons, the way those characters in Animaniacs, their faces could be elated and they could drop to the floor. I mean, the expressions that Jon and his crew achieved with the animated characters were not achieved by all the other studios. I think
the other ones, they were following the model sheets, and I mean the model sheets are important, and that's probably been my biggest problem with my animation, is that I don't follow the model sheets as well as I should. Like, for instance, I think the TMS team, whoever they had doing Animaniacs, they would follow the models and make it look good at the same time. I my hat's off to them, because I think they were really consistent. And because I was doing so much of StarToons work, and my ability to follow model sheets is so bad, I thought I needed to just animate the heck out of it to make up for it.
Well, we have a few more right here to run through. We have Meet Minerva, of course, the Minerva cartoons. Still popular to this day. Now,
that was the cartoon that they had to go in and change her cleavage because I think Gene McCurdy said she's too zaftig. Is that a word?
I don't know.
Meet
John Brain.
Oh, that's a great pick.
Fantastic one right there. Ragamuffins, of course.
That's the black and white.
And white one, yeah.
Right. Right.
With their red noses.
Yeah.
Still with their red noses. Somehow the red noses came through the film processing.
They're magical guys. What can I say? Karaoke Dokie.
I love that one.
Yes.
With Captain Kirk, right?
Bob, Flash. Have you any wool?
And I was a big Shatner fan. I loved Star Trek when I was a kid, and I ended up being at some trade show, and William Shatner was there, and I was just gushing over him. I went up to him and I got to animate you. He's like, really? He was not impressed. But
$50, please. Next.
Yeah, really. Yeah. And get off my lap.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see. We have Scare Happy Slappy.
That's that Halloween episode. Yeah.
Yeah. A great Shakespeare Explained the Macbeth one.
Oh, those are beautiful cartoons.
Yeah. It, which is Wacko being chased.
Yes.
Yeah,
right
that's
there.
like a no-cut cartoon. That was a
animating backgrounds.
Yeah, animating backgrounds. So it was all one scene, and so Dave Pryor and I split that one.
Wow.
He did the first half, and I did the second half, I think.
Tremendous amount of work.
It was.
It was all on cell, right?
Yeah, and we thought,
the background was painted cell, just moving. Oh my God.
Painted cell. So we thought it would be good. Well, it's at nighttime, so we'll try and keep the colors kind of muted and dark blue, and I think it worked. All right.
It worked great.
Good.
I think that was the macadamia nut episode too, and
Right.
I think that was the episode with Bully for Skippy.
Bully for Skippy. It was all 92.
Which is a great episode about Reef Blunt. That's the one that you were there for the recording, were you not, John?
I was actually there, and I remember I wasn't really aware of what was going on, but apparently this was a big kind of a way of the Warner Brothers writers are getting back at the FCC for all these regulations they were putting on them, and I guess they were starting to say that now we had to have certain amounts of educational content and all this sort of thing, and what do you know? The next thing we hear is that Tom and the crew have written an episode about it, and that was Bully for Skippy. So that was an opportunity to just have more senseless violence and also rip on Reed Hunt, who that was the guy's name, I guess, from the FCC. But you guys Reef Blunt.
Reef Blunt, which are two marijuana insider jokes.
It's a great episode to watch on April 20th.
Yeah, well, when Sherry was recording, and I don't know if it was Tom was just kind of filling me in on some of the regulations, and I just said, boy, there's some of our tax dollars hard at work, and they laughed and they said, oh, we need to record that, and so Sherry got up there and recorded that line and we included it in the cartoon, and that's when I just thought, isn't that so awesome that an idiot like me could come up with a decent line, and they would use it because they thought it was funny. It was like there was nothing. There were no. It wasn't all personalities and.
No, there wasn't an ego on that. We wanted it.
There was an ego. Yeah. And that was the wonderful thing about working with Tom and his people was just that they didn't care as long as it was funny. And which brings me back to Bumby's mom, because to me that was so funny, and that was also kind of a commentary on violence in cartoons, and I always considered that to be sort of like my animated thesis, because it just it was like, come on, guys, nobody's really getting hurt, okay?
Yeah.
So and that poor dog that Slappy just pulls off the street, and she gives him a bomb, and then a train runs over him, and then a house falls on him. It was like all these things in one scene, and it was just like, oh my gosh. And she says, "See, he's all right." And so yeah, that one I just thought,
and then when you go and meet Bumby's mom, Vina Wallin, trailer park, I think in Arizona, is that right?
In Tucumcari, New Mexico.
Oh, New Mexico. Which is I love that name, that town.
Yeah, Tucumcari. I drove through there one time. There's nothing there.
No, there's a motel. I stayed there.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
When I drove to California to pursue my animation career, I had to stop there because
in Tucumcari. Because it was Tucumcari.
And I went into like the diner, and people were looking at me like, "Well, he's not from these parts." Yeah.
Well, we also have Magic Time with the Siegfried and Roy there.
Gosh.
So remember, don't watch that episode if you have headphones on, because Dot will blow your eardrums out in that one scene right there. She screams.
Oh, the screech? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, boy. We have The Brains Apprentice, which was, now that's the Sorcerer's Apprentice. Now, I read that you kind of had, now I think it's a great, beautiful episode as well, but John, I was reading, I think you've had some kind of mixed feelings on that one. What do you think about The Brains Apprentice?
No. I thought it was, I liked it.
Great.
What I didn't like was at first, when we first got the storyboard from the assignment, and they had a music track that was like Dukas, whatever that piece is of his. Mm-hmm. Well, it's the Sorcerer's Apprentice, but it wasn't quite that piece because I guess people were worried about getting sued or something. But it's like Dukas has been dead for a long time, right?
Yeah.
So between that and Dot the Macadamia Nut, because at first, remember, Tom, they weren't going to use the actual music for the Macarena either.
Right.
And so they had done like a scratch music track that was sort of Macarena-esque, but not the Macarena. And I remember talking to Tom on the phone saying, man, it's a shame they can't just use the music. And he says, yeah, we can't. And then the next thing I know is he's called me back a couple days later, and he's like, hey, guess what? We bought the music. so they got to use the actual.
Well,
Macarena.
John suggested it. He said, see if you, and so we did.
Well, I did.
It's no trouble asking. All you got to do, I mean,
yeah. And Tom, you wrote the lyrics to that, right?
Yes, I did. And that's why I wanted to use the original as well, because I wrote it to the original tune. And that has a lot of weird little complicated, it has some Spanish in it, and it's just wild.
Yeah. Well, again, I mean, I would refer you back to the original music video for that song, because everything we did was based on that, including Ralph's provocative dancing.
And at the fact that Yakko and Wacko are at the mic the same way that the original singers are right there, and the split screens are very similar.
Yeah.
Right. And there's a gal in that appears in several costumes like Dot does.
Yes.
Right? So okay.
Beautiful.
But back to Brains Apprentice, because it was mainly a musical number. And so the thing about music is you basically want to make sure that you're cutting to the beat and that your action is kind of on the beats. And beyond that, you kind of let the music and the storyboard dictate everything. And for that reason, I used that cartoon as kind of a chance to let Ron Fleisher, my tech guy, get a directing credit.
Oh.
So I gave that to him to supervise. Of course, he didn't animate any of it, but he arranged the whole thing. He took a lot of pride in it, and
Timed it.
yeah, he timed it, and he gave out the assignments, and I did a few of the scenes for him, and it was good. I mean, it was great. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. And there's just a few more right here. In Hooray for North Hollywood, Part 1, we have the song There's Only One of You that was kind of like stuck in there. And then closing it out with a Chicken Boo with Punchline, Parts 1 and 2.
That rings a bell.
Yes. It's a great Chicken Boo. I
hate to say it, but it's like there's so much footage involved, and I often have to be reminded about these things.
Yeah.
But Chicken Boo, I thought, was another one of those quirky ideas. It was just like there's a chicken being a chicken, and people are allowing him to be all kinds of other things.
That's Deanna Oliver, the same as I think most of the Randy Beemans were Deanna Oliver.
Yes. With her son as Randy, as Colin, I should say, as the boy talking about Randy Beeman. So, yeah.
And then, of course, Jon and his team went on to do Road Rovers and Hysteria. But I think, do we want to look at anything?
Yeah, we can do a quick. I'll tell you what. Why don't we do a quick watch through of the macadamia nut? Okay, and this is where we will pause just for a minute because the commentary for the macadamia nut can be found over at our Patreon, patreon.com/Animanicast. That's right. Over there you can hear and actually see Jon McClenahan's video commentary over there with Tom Ruegger and, of course, us all enjoying the macadamia nut. And it's a lot of fun. And there's a bunch of other stuff over there at our Patreon as well that you can check out, including over 50 episodes of commentaries from Tom Ruegger, but also Peter Hastings, John P. McCann, and Paul Rugg, as well as others. So, hey, head on over today. You can become a supporter of our show, patreon.com/Animanicast, and we appreciate your support.
I wanted to animate that one myself entirely, but it didn't work out that way. So I did farm out some of the scenes, but I did get to animate most of that one myself.
Wow.
Gorgeous.
Mm-hmm.
There's another senior thesis, Jon.
Yes, exactly.
That's my dancing thesis.
Well, I think before we go to some of the questions, I think we should talk about just going to the Emmy Awards ceremony in 1997 before we get to our questions for the audience and everything. What was that? How was that there, Jon?
Well, it was unbelievable. I mean, just to be able to be invited to the ceremony. I mean, I wasn't really, I wasn't a Warner Brothers employee per se, but I guess I had directed enough of the episodes that qualified me to be able to go with the team. And I remember first I remember some great food. New York has got some great restaurants. And that's another thing, being a guy from Chicago, I was kind of scared of New York. I mean, it seemed like, oh gosh, all the people there are mean, and it's a big, it's just a big Gotham city with all these big black skyscrapers and everything. But I've actually found the people to be actually kind of wonderful, and they're all busy though, so it's like they don't really have time to mess with you, but for the most part, they're nice people. So that was a nice experience. And then, and I remember as we were milling around, well, how we got into the thing. It was in the Radio City Music Hall, and there was some kind of a procession that went on for blocks and blocks, and so you had to like wind your way.
We ate dinner at some restaurant, some big sprawling place where they had everybody eating dinner. Then you left,
right?
And you went across the street, right?
Yeah, and we're all in our tuxedos, right?
Yep.
And gowns.
You were in the gown, yes.
The gown. You were in a tuxedo, and but yeah, I just remember. Okay, and now we start walking, and we're walking, and we're walking, and we're walking, and we're walking up and down streets and alleys, and people in tuxedos and gowns walking ahead of us and behind us. So we were all just, staying in line and kept on walking. And eventually we came up, turned a corner, and there we were, and there was a red carpet, right?
Yep.
And paparazzi and cameras. And of course, it was just all blowing my mind.
And fans of mostly of daytime drama, fans behind the ropes. And say,
right. And immediately when we got there, their eyes all glazed over.
They said, "What show are you in?" And we said, "Animaniacs."
And I remember at one point the procession slowed down, and I think, Tom, you took a picture of the gang in a pose in the alley. It was like Band on the Run or something.
It was from the album cover of the Paul McCartney Band on the Run album. And we still have that picture.
And I'd love to get a copy of that picture if you ever have time to send it to me.
I will find that.
Thank you. But then we're sitting in the audience, and we're watching all these awards being given. And eventually it came to our category, and we won, and it was just it was like, holy cow. And you guys, we were all sitting in one row, and I was on the far side, sitting with my wife. And so I saw you guys get up and go towards the aisle. So I got up and went towards the other aisle. But the other aisle didn't have a stairway to the stairs.
Oh, no.
So all you guys were going up the stairs, and I was like, how am I going to get up there? And I ended up just kind of vaulting up there, jumping up onto the stage, tripping over some wires.
Security.
Yeah, exactly. But luckily there was a big gang of them, and I don't think anybody noticed me. So I quickly scurried to the back where I belong. And but then we got our award, which was presented, I think, by who's the guy from that prison movie? Oh gosh.
The tall guy.
Yeah. Robbins.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Shawshank Redemption.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So he presented, and just before that, I think Mr. Rogers got a Lifetime Achievement Award or something. And so we ended up getting ushered backstage, and they take us to an elevator, and there's a big table in front of the elevator, and they say, pick. There's a bunch of Emmy Awards there, and they said just take one of those. And so we all got to take one off the table, and then we got on the elevator, and we went up the elevator, and I remember being on the elevator with Tim Robbins and Mr. Rogers. So
wow,
are you taller than Tim Robbins?
I am taller than Tim Robbins, but he's another tall drink of water.
Yeah, he is.
He's a pretty tall guy.
So
I'll tell you who's not that tall that I thought was tall.
Mr. Rogers?
I saw Hulk Hogan. I saw there.
Oh.
And he's not really that tall. I don't know if he's maybe 6'1" or 6'2" or something.
Oh, what a short guy.
Yeah.
Well, look, I'm just saying, it's like when I saw him next when I saw him throwing Sylvester Stallone around, I had this idea that he was just this monster. So
Wake you.
The Stallone isn't that tall either.
I guess Stallone actually just isn't that big. He's not actually a heavyweight.
Right.
So,
and
yeah.
you met Ben Stein there as well. Is that right?
Ben Stein, I got to meet beforehand. Beforehand, he was such a nice guy. I remember seeing him the following year also when we got to go to the award show, and we didn't win that time. And I remember going to, there's some when you don't win, you go out to dinner and you get drunk and you get sad and cry in your drink. And Ben Stein walked into the restaurant and he came up to our table and he said, "You were robbed." So I said, "Yes, we were, Ben." Very nice guy, though.
I don't think we can thank you enough for all the contributions that you made to the wonderful, just fantastic cartoon. Of course, Animaniacs is what I'm referring to. Nathan, Kelly, do we have any questions to close things out with here?
So many.
Yes.
So I know that's the thing. We have so many. Kelly, we'll start with you. What questions do we have from audience members?
Okay. There's a question from Kelsey, and it's actually related to the clip we watched just a few minutes ago. I love the Macadamia Nut song more than the Macarena. I was wondering, how many times did you have to watch the Macarena music video while making the parody? It's up there with the Muppets' Bohemian Rhapsody as one of the best music video parodies I've ever seen.
Well, we did have the original on hand to look at. Of course, we had like a bad VHS copy of it, but we did refer to that quite a bit. I mean, whenever I would start a scene, I would think, okay, where is this in that? And I'd look at it and, probably, I would say I probably referred to the original video 10 or 20 times a day.
Wow.
For a couple of weeks while we were working. Yeah, just to look at specific moments. Because that's the thing. It's like when you're working as an animator, you're working frame by frame. And you have to always keep in mind there's real time. How does this actually work in real time? So you need to refer to stuff happening in real time, like Ralph dancing. It had to be that slow because the original was that slow. Yeah, it was kind of this sort of wavy motion. And this girl that was dancing was, being very seductive with her movement, and so I thought, well, this is perfect. Now we can make this big fat ass into a dancer. So yeah, just him, tied his shirt up and let his belly hang out a little bit, and just referred to that quite a bit. And I just realized it's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to put more in-betweens in here to slow it down. We have a rule that you can't put more than 3 in-betweens between keys. So if it needs more than that, then you've got to provide the extra keys. So if it's like going from 1 to 21, I would have to do number 1, number 5, number 9, number 13, number 17, and number 21. I couldn't just put 20 in-betweens between 1 and 21. Mm-hmm. So that because the in-betweeners got a lot of hard work to do anyway.
Mm-hmm. All right, Nathan, what else we got?
I got a question from a patron. This is from John, and he asks, "What episode of Animaniacs or anything else you worked with on with Tom gave you and your team the most trouble? And conversely, what's the episode you remember having the most fun putting together?"
Wow. Well, I think the one we had the most trouble with was Meatballs or Consequences. I remember that one just being a real pain in the butt. It was hard to get that one to work properly. Some of that had to
Death was in that one, right?
Right. Mm-hmm. It was a takeoff on that old Bergman film, I guess.
Yeah.
But
it doesn't show as being a pain. It's not a painful viewing experience. I find it very enjoyable. I know Kelly likes that one. And
Yeah.
is that
It's
right?
Spielbergian.
That's the one that has all is strange and vague. Are we dead or is this Ohio?
Yeah.
There's some beautiful stuff, and I
Very
think it's
beautiful
well
shots.
animated. So I guess the hassle must have been, I don't know.
yeah, hopefully, yeah. I mean, part of the hassle was making sure that the hassle didn't show up on screen.
That's right. That's right.
So
It didn't. Yeah.
but, yeah, there was a lot of, and a lot of it I think had to do with staffing. I had a few animators that I was trying out on that one, and they weren't working out well, so that meant we had to redo their stuff and tell them to go back to in-betweening or something, which is always painful.
Sure.
So I that's the one that I remember, and but you know, if I put that on a scale of difficulty, it would still be in probably the top 10% of fun projects that I've worked on in my life. You know, because just doing everything we did with Warner Brothers was fun. It was just a lot of fun. And I never, like I say, I never wanted to do commercials. I didn't like, you know, I've worked on a lot of series, you know, Hanna-Barbera, their stuff, I don't know if you would say it was fun. It was just like it was work and it paid. But this stuff that we got to do with Tom and his crew was always fun. So it's like, yeah, maybe Meatballs and Consequences wasn't one that you know, was at the top of that bunch of cartoons, but in my career it was still one of the better experiences I ever had. And the most fun I think was probably Bumby's Mom, or, you know, I did have a lot of fun doing Macadamia, Adopt the Macadamia Nut. Most of them, you know, any of the Slappy Squirrel ones. Slappy was just a character I loved. I thought, I didn't realize that her voice was, Sherry took that from some stand-up routine that she did, but I just thought it was perfect. So I loved her voice. I loved her rendition of it. I actually found it hard to believe that she did it because, you know, she's this cute little thing, and Slappy sounds so much like she's run through the mill too many times. But I love Slappy, and so, you know, Slappy had that kind of quirky, droll sense of humor and that kind of curmudgeonly demeanor that unfortunately probably characterizes me too much.
Well, I think, just close it off. I have one last comment here. This one, actually, Dave Pryor sent a little comment to you on our Instagrams. He just said, all the positive Chicago vibes. This is all Dave Pryor had to say to you. So,
oh, that's good. That's good.
Yeah. It's been wonderful having you on, Jon and Tom. Thank you so much for accompanying him along as we have gone through all this stuff. And, you know, there's so much more StarToons to go. I think it'd be great, you know, just continue, you know, in the future. We'll have to revisit some of the StarToons stuff with maybe one or two of the other people who have been in, you know, as part of your crew to talk about an episode or two that because, you know, it's just real great stuff. Really, you know, some of the highlights of the entire series were the stuff made by StarToons. I think most fans agree with that.
Thank you so much, Joey. That's so nice to hear. That's so nice to hear.
I think it'd be good to do a viewing of some of it with Jon at some point in the future when you guys have the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Because there's a lot. I mean, just going over that list, they're just like, oh my gosh, that one's great. That one's great. That one's great.
We can do Wally Llama, Meatballs and Consequences.
Exactly.
Karaoke
Dokie. Yep.
Yeah. Pick out some highlights and get Jon to talk you through them. That'd be great.
And then, of course, Bumby's Mom. Yeah, exactly.
Fantastic.
The iconic thing in Wally Llama is when he's going llama 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 llama.
Well, let's go ahead and once
No more
again,
questions.
No more questions. No more questions. It's time to wrap up things.
I made my mom watch that episode. I'm like, Mom, you have to watch this episode. She thought it was hilarious.
Let's go ahead and get to some contact information. Once again, Nathan, where can people find you online?
Oh, Joey, I'm still on Twitter for some reason. Django FT, that's me.
I mean, he hasn't tweeted in over a year, but he's still there.
Still technically there.
He's still technically there. Kelly, what about you?
I'm also on Twitter, Yoda Princess, YODAPRNCSS.
All right. And Tom, you're
I can be
around.
found on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. Yeah,
Right.
please find me.
And as for John, well, you have to search really high and far and low. I don't know if you'll be able to find him anywhere.
Yeah, I'm on the banks of the Sauk River in the Ozarks.
So just
Look
call
for
out
me there.
Yes.
Yeah,
Just start
yodel.
yelling. Yeah, yodeling. That's great. As for the Animanicast, we're on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and some other stuff. And if you want to reach out to us, animanicast@gmail.com. We have, of course, our member of the Retro Zap Podcast Network. So you're a member of the Retro Zap Discord and all that stuff. Head on over to retrozap.com today for fantastic podcasts and articles every day. Check them out. Well, that'll do it for today's episode. So, for Nathan, Kelly, Tom, and John, this is Joey saying good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, nurse.
Good night, everybody.
This podcast is not endorsed by Warner Brothers or Amblin Entertainment and is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Animaniacs, Tiny Toon Adventures, Freakazoid, the Warner Brothers logo, all names, pictures, and sounds are registered trademarks and or copyrights of their respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of the Animanicast unless otherwise indicated.
That was pointless. How you doing?
I feel airsick.
Dissolve to the next scene, quick!